Hello, today we'll be talking about supply and demand in the goods and services market. So to start off with, the supply and demand model is one of the most important models that we have in economics. It allows us to understand how the decisions that buyers and sellers make impact the prices and quantities of goods and services that we see in our economy. So to start off with, when we talk about the supply and demand model, we're going to be talking about a model that operates in competitive markets. Here we have lots and lots of buyers and lots of sellers, each of them acting in their own self-interest. For buyers, they are trying to get the lowest possible price that they can for the goods and services that they want to buy. For the sellers, they are trying to get the highest possible price for the goods and services that they are selling. Through these acts of self-interest and through the decentralized decisions of buyers and sellers, millions and millions of buyers and sellers come together and interact in the market and act in a way that will yield the best possible price for the goods and services and the optimal quantity produced. Today, we will discuss specifically how we get to this point. So let's start off first with talking about demand. Demand comes from the buyer of the good or service. For each buyer, remember, they are trying to get the lowest possible price. We have what we call the law of demand. Law of demand tells us that at a low price, we will have a high quantity demanded. And at a high price, we are going to have a low quantity demanded. So the law of demand is going to tell us that at a high price, we have a low quantity demanded. And at a low price, we have a high quantity demanded. Therefore, the law of demand is going to illustrate a negative relationship between price and quantity. There are certain factors that are going to cause a shift in the demand curve. These will include a change in income, a change in taste and preferences, a change in the price of related goods, a change in the number of buyers, and a change in future expectations. Now, with a change in income, in most cases, what we assume is that higher incomes mean that we have a higher quantity demanded at each price point. But in fact, we need to differentiate between two types of goods. With a change in income, if we are talking about a normal good, higher income means higher quantity demanded at each price point. But if we are talking about an inferior good, with more income, we actually demand less of the good because the good is considered inferior. Additionally, when we talk about changes in the prices of related goods, we need to talk about complements versus substitutes. Complementary goods are goods that are consumed simultaneously, so that a change in the price of one good is going to cause a change in the quantity demanded of the other good. So for example here, complements would be peanut butter and jelly. If the price of peanut butter falls, we may consume more jelly. On the other hand, substitutes, we substitute the consumption of one good for another. Here we can think of apples and oranges. If the price of apples rises, then our demand for oranges will also rise because we're going to swap our consumption instead of buying more expensive apples for the consumption of oranges. Next, we want to talk about supply. Supply comes from the firm, and the firm is trying to get the highest possible price that they can for the good or service that they are selling. The law of supply is going to tell us that at a high price, we are going to have a high quantity supplied. And at a low price, we are going to have a low quantity supplied. So that as we can see here, the supply curve is going to be an upward sloping line. There are four factors that will cause a shift in the supply curve. First, a change in the price of inputs. One of the factors that determines the supply for firms is the cost of production. And this is going to be determined by the price of the inputs. So if there's a change in the price of the input, there is a change in the cost of production. So the amount of goods and services that a firm can produce at a given price will change. Next, a change in production technology. With technological advancements, the cost of production falls, so the firm can produce more at the same price. Next, a change in the number of sellers. With more sellers, at each price point, there is a greater quantity supplied. And lastly, a change in future expectations. Specifically, future expectations of input prices and the price of a good. If a firm anticipates that the price of the good that they are producing will rise in the next 6 months, they will produce more of that good in the future. On the other hand, with an increase in the price of inputs expected in the next 6 months, the firm will produce more today when those inputs are cheaper. Next, we will bring together demand and supply to determine the market equilibrium. Thanks for joining me in this module on talking about supply and demand.